think of anyone you know or anyone you've ever come into contact with being affected by it, because it's just so scary. I don't even want to think about it at times.
It makes me feel extremely sad on the inside, and it makes me want to do something to help someone.
I am a community organizer. I grew up in a upper working class family. I'm 44 years old. I was abused for over 11 years.
I think about little girls. I think about females, particularly under the age of 13 years old.
And I was sexually abused as a child at my babysitter's house by an older boy who was friends with one of her sons.
I think I generally think of low income, it's weird, either urban families or rural families. I think those are the two images that I've seen most in the media.
I am a survivor of child sexual abuse. I was abused by my daycare provider along with dozens of other children when we were 3 and 4 and 5 years old. I come from suburban New Jersey, outside New York City, a bedroom suburb that is, although idyllic on the surface, hides a lot of secrets related to child sexual abuse.
You know, all these adults who are perfectly functional and perfectly normal, and from every class and background, that these are all, you know, people who potentially had some history of abuse.
I just think that a lot of the news stories that I've seen or heard of are people who are trusted by the family or by the kids, you know, sometimes teachers, priests. But then again, when some of my friends have told me about their abuse, it's like their cousins or their fathers.
I think fathers, I think older men who are in the families of the victim.
The fact that my abuser was a woman, so folks have assumed that I'm gay, and that's somehow related to the fact that my abuser was a woman. And that is, of course, if they don't first assume that women don't abuse children, because they have a picture of pedophiles as men, usually straight men, sometimes gay men. That's another stereotype.
That there are people that we might hold in high regard, that perhaps because of that shield of reputation, they feel that they can get away with it.
Perpetrators are generally family members or friends of the family, and often were victims or survivors of abuse themselves.
There's one close friend who comes to mind, and my understanding is that her stepfather was the person who committed the crime, who was the perpetrator.
Well, I know someone who was abused by a family member. I don't know who. The victim I know didn't report it because she told her parents, and it wasn't clear to them that it was abuse, and they told her to keep it quiet.
The person I know who was abused by her doctor did tell people, and she was ridiculed for it, and it was she was told she was a liar by her family and also by the authorities.
One friend, he was abused by his father, and so then another friend of mine, it started with her grandfather when she was 3, and there have been other people in her life as well, including her sister's husband.
One of my friends, she's in her 40s, she was molested by one of her siblings, and she suffered with depression and bipolar and eating disorders later on in life.
I think that the reason people don't talk about sexual abuse, especially when it involves a member of their family, is because of the horrifying shame.
Because there's a stigma in many cultures and in American culture, you know, for people who have been abused or been raped.
A lot of us oftentimes don't want to deal with the fact that we've been abused ourselves, you know. Sometimes we don't even realize it. We just kind of shut it out. Or it becomes like, well, this is how life is, so you just deal with it, you know.
When I first like read statistics, it's just like, it's like mind-boggling. It's like 1 in 4 girls, like 1 in 6 boys. Like, that's crazy. And the fact that people don't know that, I mean, it's just, it's missed opportunity. It's
the first thing that needs to be done is more education in schools. I think having children just be able to name what it is that they may be experiencing at home is the first step.
To intervene and make a difference with that, I just feel like you have to go out in the community and try to have people that care about the issue there, like in different situations, maybe after school programs, you know, certain settings where someone could take notice and see things going on. Like,
you know, pass more legislation that was geared towards stricter penalties, longer sentences on criminals. I think it would maybe decrease the act a little bit. At least they'll think twice about doing it.
You really have to address the adults and the perpetrators of the violence and try and teach them, I guess, treat them for like what has happened to them in the past and teach them more constructive ways of behavior in the future.
And also thinking about how am I going to relate as an adult to a child? Because I think there are even ways that aren't about sexual abuse that are just about the ways of respecting a young person, and even respecting a very young person, that can either communicate that your body's not your own, that I have the right to snatch you up and do this with you, or I can teach that child just through the way I am with them that their body is their own and that they can make choices about what happens to it.
There's more exposure in the media about child sexual abuse and how to prevent child sexual abuse and hearing the voices of victims. I definitely think that those who are not speaking up will be inclined to speak up.
So I would encourage other survivors to believe in themselves, believe their truth, to know that there's no shame in speaking about it, and that unless we actually begin to speak about it, it's going to continue to happen.